So, hello and welcome to Intuitive Connection. I'm your host, intuitive counselor and spiritual guide, Victoria Shaw. And today we have a guest that I am really excited to have a conversation with. I'm so lucky that I get to do this and have this podcast and have these conversations. Our guest today is Hakim Isler. Did I say your name right?
Yes.
Okay, good deal. Who is the creator of Psi Games. He's also a renowned expert in consciousness research, holistic health, and personal development. He's a dedicated practitioner of remote viewing and mindsight, having trained with some of the field's top experts. And he's also a 40-year practitioner of martial arts, holding black belts in various arts. And then all of this, he says, fuels his research into extraordinary capabilities of the human mind and body. And I could keep going, but I'm gonna stop there because I'll actually read the whole thing and then we can edit. He's also on the advisory board of the Monroe Institute, celebrated for the Gateway Program, a board member of Center Lane Project, focused on preserving Ingo Swann's controlled remote viewing. Hakim also plays a role in advancing the study and development of human consciousness and psi potential. All right, I got it all out. Such an impressive resume, and I'm really excited to have you here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here and happy that we were able to link up.
Yay. So I want to hear your story, but before we do that, I am so fascinated by the Psi Games, which is, you're the creator of that, right?
Yeah.
Can you share with listeners a little bit about what that is and where the inspiration came from?
Yeah. So the Psi Games is the first conference meets workshop meets this tournament style event in which we actually have these fun, playful competitions in using psychic abilities. So that is basically it in a nutshell. Like, we have the normal conference standard of having a lot of talkers and speakers, and then we have workshops there. But the thing that truly sets it apart is that we bring together people who are interested in developing their psi ability, people with psi ability at various levels, to partake in this tournament style competition. And that allows us to kind of understand where we are as a species in these different modalities and disciplines, and then inspire us to kind of grow it to the next stage. So we figure out what the standards are, like where are we all at, and then like how do we get to this next level. And then it also kind of bridges that gap between the experience and the science. So people, we could research what's happening and how it's happening and why it's happening, and see if we can motivate people to develop beyond to the next level in a way that everybody can respect and get along. And the biggest thing about all of this is just this idea of ethics. As we start to expand in this realm, how do we do it in a way where we're collaborative, we form a strong community, but we also do it in a very ethical way, and have a foundation of ethics. And there have been people who explored psi ability for different reasons in the past. And sometimes they were just very direct, like, hey, for instance, their old military remote viewing program was like, hey, we need this so that we can get information from people that don't like us because they're doing it to us, and this is way different. This is like, how do we raise ourselves up as a species? How do we build a community for people to feel like they're not crazy and that they belong, and that we could all get together and share these things? And then as we evolve as humans, like, what does that really look like? And how do we do that? Is it going to be a purely accidental or developmental thing over time, or is it something that we can actually be engaged with as an active participant? And so that's kind of like the idea of the Psi Games.
It's a beautiful idea, and it feels like you're bringing a lot of different things together: awareness of, that people do have and can develop these extrasensory abilities, and that they're for reals, right? Because I think that's the first thing, is that a lot of people think, oh, that's crazy, oh, that couldn't happen. I think until you've experienced it, either firsthand or working with someone else or witnessing someone else who's doing this stuff, it does for some people, never for me, but for some people, it feels like, that can't be possible. And, as someone who has these experiences all the time, like I know as a felt sense, it is very possible. It is very real. But I think for a big segment of our population, they're still figuring that out, and they're still getting to a place where there's enough sort of evidence for them to trust in this existing, and then also in this existing within themselves.
Yeah, and going on that, there's another aspect to that. We have 150 to 200 years of empirical evidence of people who have been researching psi. But when you talk to the average person, they're not aware of that research, they're not aware of that data. And normally people will have this experience where something happens. One of the most common is a near-death experience, and they come back, or they have someone that they love that they lose, and then they have an experience with that person. Um, and then they're inspired and motivated to figure out what's going on. And so they start looking, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of data here. Like, there's a lot of research in this field. I've heard that story a million times. So there's a disconnect between the average person who is walking around in our world, and then people who have this understanding of this field. And how do we bridge that gap? The scientists think that we just keep doing research papers and peer-reviewed studies, and somehow the world just is going to get it. And I'm like, well, not really. You have to make it experiential, because it's the experience, it's the connection that really gets people involved in this. And so, how do we make this fun and playful and exciting? And through that excitement and that play, we will inspire people to want to be motivated to go out and actually do some homework. And that's when we bridge the gap. And then also, how do we keep this cross generational? We have many times you go to conferences or these events, or even look at the researchers, and everybody, is seasoned. In yoga we would
Seasoned.
say it's the sunset stage of life. But where's the sun rise stage of life? Where's these youth that are out there that we want to connect with and mentor and have them believe in their abilities and empower them? And we have to, if we want that, we can't just do lectures and expect people to, or write research papers and expect these kids to take any type of notice. But we do it through fun,
Yeah.
for, both adults and youth at various ages just love to have fun.
And I feel also that this should be fun. Like,
Hmm.
it does not have to be serious. It's really, really,
Yeah.
really, really fun. And it's, everybody, at least in my understanding, everybody has these abilities to some degree. For
Hmm.
some of us, the volume was just turned on really, really loud. And so it was a little harder to ignore, but everybody has them and everyone can develop them, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Yes, this is very true. So, we are a multidimensional being. We are a being that comes in this realm from wherever we come from, the spirit realm, consciousness, the quantum. I mean, there's all different types of ways people might explain that. And we tap into this physical body, and then we kind of forget that we still have these other aspects to us. And so we have this, we call it in yoga, the gross, subtle, and causal plane. So we have this kind of subtle and this causal plane connection too. And quite often, the older we get, we tend to turn that off in the way our society is structured here in
Right.
the US. And, the goal is like, well, we still have these capabilities, they're still there. And if we practice and tapped into them, they could be useful. It's just that sometimes people don't know why they're useful. Why could this be functional for my life? And, um, other cultures have found, hey, well, how did we create medicines? Well, quite often these ancient folks or traditional folks will say, well, I talked to the plant. The plant told me that if I did this, it'll work. I don't know. Like,
Right.
it sure wasn't, if we had a tribe of only 20 people, it sure wasn't like 18 of us trying to plant until we died. And then the two who lived decided that they were going to like use it as a medicine or not use it as a medicine. No, something was taking place there. So I think, yes, we all have this ability, this capacity, and it manifests in various forms and shapes, and it's something that we can also train and develop.
Yeah. And I love something that you said in there because it's really my belief and understanding that anything that's truly like innovative or creative or aha moments or basically anything really good is divinely inspired and comes through our intuition. And then, our mind will quickly, if we feel the need, take credit for it because that's what we've been taught to do. We've been taught
Hmm.
like you can't just know something. You can't talk to a plant. You can't, you have to explain how you logically came to that. And so we shut it down, but it's still there. So I always tell people when I'm teaching intuition development, start with like those aha moments, those amazing things that came into your life, those synchronicities, because those are examples where it was shining through. And anything that you're really good at or really you get in the flow or those inspirations or those great decisions in my book, they're always intuitively guided.
Hmm.
um, and like when we can start to recognize that, we open the flow even more.
Yeah, yeah, fantastically well put. Yeah.
All right, so tell me your story. How did you get involved in all of this?
Okay. Well, I can tell you that, and I can. Did you did ask a second part of that question
Okay.
about where Psi Games came from?
All right,
So I can move on, or I can finish that one.
let's do the second part of my first question and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
we'll move on.
I get a little wordy at times. You got to pull me in.
You're good because you're a linear thinker, as you can tell. I am not.
So the side games came to me as a download, very simply
Wow.
put. And it was this moment, and it came, and it wasn't a very one moment download. It was a series of moments that led to an overall, like you said, aha, like that's it. And it originally was born as this thing where I own a martial arts school and I was teaching my kids and we were doing stuff. And in our ninja martial arts system, through the ninja tradition, we have these nine powers, these nine abilities. We call them Nakuji. And I was watching the kids at my school and they were running around pretending to be these animation characters. So they would do these mudras and say these mantras from the animation characters. And I would stop and say, hey, we have that in our art. And one kid challenged me and was just like, "Hey, well, show me how to do it." And I thought about it and I was like, well, other than the 26 years of training that I did with my teacher out in the woods, in the water, in the river, like I don't have a real way to have this kid have a quick experience where he can believe in his own true potential and inspire him to really start to move in that direction and practice and train in that, other than, hey, just train with me for 26 years and maybe you'll have an experience. And that's not going to fly for a kid. So that was kind of my first thing. And that set me off to start looking for easy protocols that I can input into the course that would allow people to have an immediate experience that could hopefully motivate them to move on. And I started remote viewing, and then that was too complicated of a protocol. It worked for me. I loved it, but not for like me trying to train the young folks. And then I started with Mindsight, and then I did the Gateway and got to Monroe, and Mindsight worked really well. And so I was just kind of content with plugging that in and doing that stuff. And um, one day I was as I was having these little micro experiences, I was driving to my school, my second school, and I was listening to a podcast. And there was this guy who worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency who wrote a book about UAPs. And the guy who was interviewing him said, "Hey, you're talking about all these like non-human intelligences and UAPs and how the
What's
government's
a
studying
UAP?
that." A UAP is or unidentified anomalous phenomena. It
Got
used to
it.
be UFO, right? So
Okay.
unidentified flying object, but they said we don't even know if these things are flying or if they're like blipping in and out
Okay.
of time space. Um, so so I heard he was saying this is pretty scary stuff. Are you guys scared or whatever? And the guy said, well, actually, all I can say is that if we as human beings could tap into our greatest potential, which things we know about what we can do that we haven't tapped in yet, um, we wouldn't have anything to be afraid of. And I actually like a voice, like somebody in a passenger seat screaming in my car. Psi Games came back up as a thought, and it was like, that's the answer. How do you bridge that gap? How do you pinpoint where we are, what we're doing, how are we doing in these different places. Bring all these people together to inspire them and motivate them so that we can start moving as the general people. This is not just, I don't want it to just be something that some DIA agent knows and he's not willing to tell anybody else. This is for the people. It's for every person. It's a part of who you are. It's like saying language is not something that we want to give to you. Oh, well, I can't say much, but if you just knew the right language, then you'd be able to have all the things you want in the world,
Right.
like wait a
Well,
minute, why are you holding that away from me?
uh,
So the best thing is why don't we all get together and inspire one another to really move to the next stage of our human evolution as a species. So we can then be the ones who know what we are truly capable of and not have to wait for somebody to tell us what we're truly capable of. We will bring that forth together as a community.
that's beautiful. And what I'm thinking too is most of the circles that I walk in are people that already believe in this stuff. They already believe in this stuff. I always say I have the luck of I preach to the choir. Like someone comes to me for a mediumship reading, they already think I'm a medium. Like half of the job is done, right? I mean, obviously, you always want to use discernment, and I tell every client, and I'll say it again now, you have the answers within you, and even if they come out of somebody else's mouth, it's my speaking, to you, you have to tune into yourself and see if it fits, right? If it doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
you got to let that go. Because I don't know. I don't have your answers. I'm just one of the many things to help you find them.
Mm.
But again, the people that, go to psychic fairs or they already kind of believe. And what I love about what you're doing is you're making it fun, you're making it accessible, you're making it entertaining, you're making it interactive. I mean, it's just really a beautiful way to bring people together who are curious, who want to preaching to the choir and then also, other members of the congregation and beyond.
Yeah, yeah. And that's exactly it. It's just bringing it to everyone in a way that's accessible and everybody likes to have fun.
Yeah.
And we've developed by necessity Psi Games Online. And so we're developing that out, which is going to be an online platform
Okay.
where we have a series of games to help develop psi abilities and it makes it relatable to the average person. So again, we can meet with kids and adults and everybody can play, and you could be at the doctor's office training your psi ability, and you could be out at the park training your psi ability, and anywhere in the world. And that's really what it's about. It's about building that community around an idea of moving us forward as a species. That's really
I love that. And before we get to your story, which I still want to know, because the next question is coming into my brain, let's talk about the ethics piece, because it seems like that's
it.
really super important to you. And I was thinking, like, a lot of what you're doing reminds me of like, magic or, circus. Not circus is bad, but you know what I mean? Like entertainment where we show, or even the Olympics where we show like what's possible. But when we're dealing with psi abilities, right, there are some important ethical guidelines. So I want to know how you're addressing that and sharing that and bringing that out there.
Yeah, so definitely. So when you can see anytime, anywhere, any place, and that is something that we all have a capability of, and it's something that we definitely want to. That capability gives us a lot of positives, but also the negative side could be like, well, I'm interested in this lady and I want to see how she lives, and so let me go in my room and then click into her space and then see what's going on, and that's not ethical. And
Right.
so and especially if you're teaching kids may not even know that that's not, like
Right.
if you're saying, hey, today we're going to learn how to make stew, and here's a knife, and this knife we're going to cut carrots, and you never say, well, actually, that knife can actually cut you too, and it can cut
Exactly.
other people around you, and it can hurt them really bad. So we got to make sure that we're safe with this knife, and we use it only for cutting this carrot and doing these things. Keep it in a safe distance. Put it back in, clean it and put it back into its case to make sure it doesn't hurt anybody. So yeah, we're building into the use of this tool. In this case, this knife as an example. We're building into how to use it, this framework of what's the proper way to use it and what's an ethical way to use it. Um, and so if we just take that and extrapolate out to this idea of, psi abilities, yeah, I would love to know if somebody is at a park right now and they're frantic and they're saying, my child, I don't know where my child is, and everybody's scrambling looking for this child, and you just take a moment and zone in and boom, oh, they're over there next to this car around the corner. They're looking for you. I was able to tap in. That's great, right? So that's a very, I think, moral and ethical reason to use it. But if you're like, hey, what's going on in this person's house, and that didn't ask me to look into their space and any of that stuff, now it's a different story. And as a person like yourself, who's a coach and all these other things, if you, it's not polite to just walk up to somebody who didn't ask for your coaching and just start coaching them. You know what? You look like your life sucks. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to help you. Da da da. That'll not go well for a lot of reasons, and it's not. I don't think that's necessarily
Not respectful.
respectful, or yeah. And so you get permission. Okay, this person came to me. Hey, do I have your permission to tell you what I'm feeling right now about your situation? Oh yeah, please do. Okay, that's a different story. So those type of things are the things we have to talk about and
Yeah.
share. And that was not the framework of some of the developments. Like if you think about when the government developed Psi, abilities through like the remote viewing program, they were looking at an adversary and they were just like, hey, this adversary is looking at us, we're looking at them, and that's it. I think they had an ethical concept of, well, we don't want to use this on American citizens, but even then we see where we are with that, with our own technology and stuff that's been coming out with the Patriot Act and us being able to spy on certain people and what Snowden brought out. So just the point being is that the idea is that we really have to discuss what we're doing, especially as kids grow up in an environment where this might be the next stage of our evolution. PK, being able to heal. In martial arts, we say if you know how to heal, then you know how to wound or hurt, right? If you know how to hurt, then you can kind of understand how to heal. And so you have an ethical responsibility and a moral responsibility to not just be using these things negatively, because you have this information, you can hurt somebody with it. And so that's where I think this is really important as well. That's where the mentorship come in. Because if we start coming into an age where young ones are being born into the world with these gifts at a level we haven't seen before, which seems to be the case with like the telepathy tapes and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, it better be some wise mentors out there to be able to help guide that situation and say, hey, I know you think that's cool, but it's not so cool to look in your friend's mind when they didn't ask you or give you permission. We should probably not do that, and that's a better conversation than this person just growing up doing it and not having anybody there to mentor or guide them.
Right. And I think sometimes too, it's not even conscious, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of us, I work with a lot of parents, a lot of kids. I was a highly intuitive child that didn't know what that was called. So my energy was going everywhere. And I don't think anything ever maliciously, but definitely was wandering into corridors where my consciousness didn't need to go. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe fear based or trying to help somebody or just trying to navigate a crazy family or whatever. And so a lot of what I teach, like the kids that I work with, are energetic boundaries and, like tuning into the channels that are going to be like the most soothing for you. And just, so it's also kind of just navigating and managing, so that we're plugging into the things, that serve the highest good is the way that I think about it. People will come to me sometimes. And I mean, I do a lot of this because one of the gifts that comes very naturally to me is reading people. And I can almost always, I mean, I can't think of an example where I couldn't access the higher self, which is super, super, super helpful. But sometimes I can often read a personality too, right? So someone comes and they want me to read a personality. That could be tricky business because, right? Like I don't want to cross the line between violating someone's privacy, right? And getting a read. And so I always orient it towards, in full cooperation of all people involved, like, what does this person need to know to navigate this situation? Like, maybe I'm hiring somebody. And so so oftentimes I'll get information like, here's where you might work well together. Here's where that might not be a good fit for you. Right. But years ago, when this started opening up, and this was like my first cautionary tale, and I'm curious to know what you think about this. So I had started meditating. I started making the decision to awaken my intuition. Again, it was always really loud, but now I was really trying to do it full on. I was taking classes and doing the whole thing. And as soon as it started, I realized I had this ability to read people and know stuff about them that, I couldn't know otherwise. And I was like hungry for it, because it was just like turning on. And so I started with my then husband, like reading everyone that he worked with, right? Until one day I'm getting like the personality of this guy, and I see he's screaming at his wife and she's hiding in a closet. And I'm like, I don't need to know that. Right. Like, I don't need to know that. That's not my business. My husband certainly doesn't need to know that. There's nothing I can do about that. Right. And so like that was a real like moment for me to say, okay, like I got to orient this to on a need to know basis, like what's going to serve the highest good of the situation at hand. It's not just a dumpster dive for information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I concur with that. And I also think that another aspect of that is you could tap into someone else who has a deeper awareness, but they may not be in the space of light,
Yeah.
And for a multitude of reasons. And maybe there's some entities out there that aren't in a higher vibrational state that could be aware that you're aware.
Yeah.
and so there's those things too. I mean, there's a lot of different aspects to what's happening here. And so, yeah, I think all of that is part of the mentorship, the awareness, the wisdom, that we need to be having those conversations as we start to expand. And if we really want to go to the next level of this, I think if we look at what Psi Games represent, and I want it to be the Psi Olympics, then if we look at like what happened with the Olympics at first, I guess it was just people running, and then they realized, oh, we need to have some understanding of what the parameters are, and then we need to now people can use things to kind of make themselves like better, but it also does a lot of damage and it makes things unfair. So maybe we need some rules, and then and then maybe we also need some guidelines to keep people safe, and
Right.
and so we start to develop these things as we start to really dig into the crux of what this looks like for us to get better at something. And if you look at the Olympians today and the Olympians of the past, I mean,
It's crazy.
it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You look at even just the bodies
Yeah.
of the people and you're like, whoa, okay. And then you look at a person today and like every muscle is toned and ripped and defined, and they're moving at these incredible speeds, and their physiology is like on a whole nother level. So I think we'll get there when it comes down to this stuff, but it's just a matter of doing it in a way that's safe and that's um, loving, I think,
Yeah.
compassion.
Yeah. You said so much in there. And I think too, I often say too, like it's just what you said. You can use everybody has these abilities that are developed to different degrees, and you can use them for lots of different things. And so always vet that with yourself, both, when something's coming through you or someone's coming from someone else. Cause sometimes people will say to me, well, she knew so much about me. And then she said that thing and it really scared the pants off of me, but she knew all that other stuff. And I'm like, always trust what feels good, never go at this fear based, and know too that lots of people have these abilities and we're all existing in varying degrees of ego and various degrees of alignment and awareness. And, just because you can, discern some facts or do some remote viewing or other things, that doesn't mean that you're a totally enlightened being. And you have to vet everything that you get in the world with, your own inner compass. So.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. All right. I could talk to you forever and I want to, but I can't. Tell us a little bit about how, your own experience with all of this good stuff, because I'm guessing that your interest in psi abilities didn't probably came from personal experience. Is that
Yeah.
and
Yes.
then you got to give us all the deets on the Psi Games because everyone's going to want to go.
That's awesome.
I want to go.
Well, so very early on, I had psi experiences, and the one that I talk about the most, that was the most profound as far as really speaking to, oh, this is real. Something's going on with Hakim. Is my mom said that when I was in between 8 and 9, I believe it's 9, that I had told her. I woke up one day, I dreamt the lotto numbers, and I woke up and I told her the lottery numbers, and she played them locally but not nationally, and they came out nationally and not locally. But
Oh,
but if you are in this space, the chances of a person coming up with the lotto numbers, all of them, in order correctly is like astronomical. And so I did that. And that was one thing. The other thing that happened was I told her I was going to be a ninja one day. She said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" This was at 9 as well. And I said, I wanted to be a ninja and I was going to be a ninja. And she was like, "Oh, that's funny." And I didn't even know what a ninja was other than cartoons. But it was funny that at 21, I started trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life and ended up through these weird circumstances finding out about this ninja martial arts, and that the guy lived in Ohio, and the guy who went to Japan and brought it back to America lived in Ohio, and decided I was going to go and train with him.
wow.
And I didn't even know, I forgot all about the 9-year-old story. So I went to Ohio, had this experience, came back, said, "That's what I want to do." Told my mom, "Hey, I'm going to pack up and move to Ohio." She said, "For what?" I said, "There's this ninja guy out there and I'm going to go be his student and I'm going to become a ninja." And she said, "Wait, what?" Wait a minute. And when she realized I was serious and I wasn't joking around, she was like, "Do you know you told me that when you were
Wow.
9 years old?" And I was like, "When? I don't remember that." And she explained the whole story. And I was like, "I
Wow.
said that?" She said, "Yeah, you knew. You had some deep knowing, I guess." And so I always had those moments, and I was always into like the cartoon characters that had these abilities and so on and so forth. And I would meditate when I was a young man, and just would go through those processes. But when I got into ninjutsu as a part of the ninja culture, the ninja people, a lot of people don't know, were these wilderness mountain people. They were like the equivalent of like our hillbillies, in the US.
Okay.
People who were just like living in the bush, connected with the land, living off the land. And that was counter the culture at the time. The culture was very like power and aristocratic, and like, you do what we say. And if we're this religion, everybody's this religion, at that particular time. And these weirdos living in the mountains with these abilities that people speak about, like as these powers, that sounds like a threat to the powers that be to me. So
Right.
so they started to be hunted and killed, and they had to come up with a way to defend themselves. But they use these powers as means to defend themselves as well as survive and keep their families alive. And so when I got into this ninja martial arts, it was very experiential based, working in nature, understanding nature, feeling nature. And then later, I had my own personal, very deep experience with the wilderness when I went to on the show Naked and Afraid, and I was in the mountains of the Himalayan mountains.
I didn't know that. That's a whole nother conversation. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
And I was in India. I was in the Himalayan mountains, and it was 34 degrees at night, and it was 60 during the day. And I was completely nude and naked, and I was eating worms out the ground and drinking out of a hole that I had dug. And I had this spiritual awakening while I was going through that. I lost 40 pounds in 3 weeks, and it was just really profound. And that's kind of what set me off on my deeper journey.
Wow.
Was that. And it's funny because it's a show. It was like a show about, a guy and a girl living off the land, and it was drama. They wanted to make all this drama and stuff. And through that process, although it was this
Crazy.
television show, I was having a different experience.
Wow.
I was having this deep, profound, life-changing experience, and these guys were trying to bring in drama, and I was becoming something different. And it was separate. It was like I was living two separate lives at the same time. Like there was one where these guys were asking me questions about what was going on between my partner and I, friendship, and like how we were going to in partnership and how we were going to survive. And I'm like, oh, this, that, and other. And then there's this portion of me that is like recognizing that I have PTSD from my time at war, and recognizing that I'm not who I thought I was. There's something else behind these layers of mask that I thought spoke to who Hakim was, and that there's this deeper connection between myself and the earth, and all of this stuff happening that I couldn't articulate on television because they didn't care. They just wanted to know about how me and my partner were fighting, or if we were going to
Wow.
fight, or if we were angry at each other. And I was having this really profound experience. So that was what really changed it for me, and which really took me to the next level. And later, through the encounter I had with one of my students, I decided to dive into remote viewing more. And I was introduced to remote viewing originally through my teacher, because he actually was working with a guy who's one of the original people in the remote viewing program, because they heard about his ninja background and how the ninja had this ability to see in a different time and place. And the United States government was interested in that, and they linked up with my teacher, and then that happened. And he would always talk about that, but I never knew who the guy was. And then once I got into remote viewing, I ended up finding this guy, having this
Wow.
moment where I was like, wait a minute, that was you? Do you know my teacher? And he said, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is what
It's
is happening?
incredible. You found your tribe.
Yes, 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 yes. I found my tribe, and there's a lot to be said in just that statement.
Yeah. I mean, you may be the only guest I've had on the show, or probably any shows that had their spiritual awakening while on a reality television show. I mean, that alone that's incredible. And
Yeah.
it must be amazing to navigate. What made you, I mean, I kind of already know what drew you to that, because it feels like that experience. I mean, the whole ninja experience, the whole living on the land is obviously probably a part of yourself from other bodies you wanted to reawaken.
Mm.
But what was going on in your head when you decided to embark upon that experience? Did you have any idea?
Well, I think what's really interesting about what you said is that there are these things that happen in our lives. I'm very convinced of this. There are these things that happen in our lives that obviously are not coincidences, that are designed specifically to have you have these moments of in these encounters, whether they be immediate awakenings or awakenings that happen later. But we're kind of being guided towards those things in ways we don't even realize. And what happened was, a friend of mine, I was special operations in the Army, and he's special forces. And we would always meet at Barnes and Nobles and have these deep discussions. And one day we met, and he happened to talk about this new show called Naked and Afraid. He asked me if I had been on it. I said, no, man, I've never been on that. And as a joke, he said, I gotta ask, buddy, why don't more African Americans do stuff in the woods? Right. And so I was like, what? I was like, come on, dude. He was just picking fun at me. We always play around that way. And I was like, of course I could do that. And I had left, and and I was like, I'm going to show him. I'm going to go online, and I'm going to fill out an application. And then next time I see him, I'll say, see, I tried, but I didn't get chosen. And 2 months later, of course, they end up calling me and saying, yeah, you're on the show.
Oh my
And
God.
and did not know, like, and I debated, and then I was like, this could kind of be a cool experience. And but didn't had no idea it was going to be as profound as it was. So
Wow.
there Shiva's temple was there. There's a village that was right on the outskirts of where we filmed. And Shiva's main this temple to Shiva is there. And they gave me one day to walk around, and I end up bumping into a monk within like 4 minutes of walking out of the little like shack that I was sleeping at. And he happened to speak English. They literally told me, like, you can walk around, but just be aware that nobody's here speaks English. And I just happened to meet this one monk, and he immediately identifies me as American, says, hey, you should come to our temple, takes me to the temple, introduces me to the headmaster.
Wow.
Headmaster does these like this ritual ceremony. Later on that night, he invites me as this foreign guy back to it. I end up there, don't know what's being said. He has me write down some stuff in a book about the way I would like my future to go. Here's the kicker with that. I don't even remember what I wrote down. But I probably am following that path. And then I go up on the mountain. I had this amazing experience. I come out, the people see me. They don't even know that I'm out there. So they see me, and I find out later that what they were saying when I came out of the tree line was they were saying like Shiva,
Wow.
because Shiva in their storyline in that village had unveiled himself to the people out of that tree, out of that wilderness. So I just happened to be in this wilderness, and Shiva, for those who may not know, is like this, deity that deals with destruction and transition or rebirth of the new, like releasing of the old. And that was like literally my experience out
I
there.
bet. I
So,
the name of that show gives me PTSD, and I have not been to war, but like that is one I've never. I mean, I've heard of it, but like I don't even like to think
yeah.
about it. So God bless. But we all find our unique calling in life, and the fact that you had such a transcendent experience in such a mainstream like different vibe just tells me that you are the exact right person to create the Psi Games, to
Mm.
spearhead this bringing of Psi abilities and this whole world to the mainstream. So, and hold your vibe through it. So,
Thank you.
yeah, you clearly trained hard for that, my friend. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Thank you for sharing everything with us. And I really mean it that I want to keep talking, but someone once told me that if these episodes are 3 hours long, no one listens to them. And I want to make sure that people hear this one. So I ask everyone this question on the show. How do you experience your intuition? Like what has that felt experience like for you?
This is a great question. And it's my intuition is interesting because when I stop to think and try to think through my intuition is normally the time that it doesn't work really well for me. Um, but when I just feel compelled to do certain things, that's normally when it's right on. So my intuition seems to manifest more in a direct knowing, or indirect knowing, I should say. It's like I know, but I don't know. I just feel compelled to go in this direction. And I also seem to have some sort of, and I don't know what it's called, but I have some sort of, whether they are angels or things that are helping guide me consistently. And when I kind of stray off in a direction, things will happen to kind of get me into where I'm supposed to be. There's a there were multiple times I've been told this, but the most recent time was that in my last life, I was told that I was an ascended master and that I chose to come back a second this time, and that I would ascend this time, whatever that means, I don't know. I could surmise as a human being trying to think on this very, very grand cosmic scale, or I could just kind of allow myself to be free of all that burden and just say I'm just living the best life that I can, which is what I choose to do, which is why I say I'm not trying to like get bogged down into what that means. But but I've seen that play out to some degree. Like if I was to draw a script of like what it would look like, I would say like the times that I'm like, holy crap, how did this happen? I walk out of my shack and I meet the one dude who speaks English at this, and it's this monk, who like swoops me up and brings me to this temple, and I'm the only foreigner there, and he's like, and I'm talking to the headmaster. Nobody gets to see the headmaster of this temple, like what's happening right now? And that stuff has happened so many times. It's so beautiful.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I think we're all guided in that way, right?
Mm,
It's just you have to when you learn to follow it. It's beautiful. Hakeem, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. People are going to want to go to the Psi Games and see the
mm.
other things that you have online. Share a little bit about when it is, where it is, and all the stuff they can do, either if they want to travel or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Psi Games is going to be held this year in Charlotte, North Carolina, July 31st through August 2nd. You can purchase tickets at PsiGamesInternational.com, and Psi is spelled PSI for those who may not know, and PsiGamesInternational.com. And then we have Psi Games Online. So if they just want to experience some of the games and things of that nature, the new version of the games will be out in April, but we do have the active website now that has some of the older games on there and not as nice as what's coming in April.
Okay.
And so that would be how people can get in contact with that. And of course, I'll send out to you for this episode a discount code for anybody who wants to use that if they wanted to purchase a ticket.
Okay. And we'll have that in the show notes. Do you want to speak it or do you not have it yet?
I don't have it yet, but I can just make it V Shaw.
Okay, let's do it.
06 or 26, V Shaw 26.
V Shaw 26 is your code. We'll have all the information in the show notes, all the links. This may go out close to April. So friends, when you're listening to this, the new thing might already be up and running, but run there. I'm going to check it out. And these are the same games that are part of the competition, or are these more training and development, or both?
It's both, actually. Cool. So we're going to have a series of different games. If anybody's ever played Lumosity, it's going to be like the Lumosity for Psi ability. It's going to have multiple games and multiple of the different disciplines, remote viewing, psychokinesis, precognition, where you could just play all day to your heart's content and really develop these skills. It's going to be a good time.
I want to learn psychokinesis. I never do well with the pick a card. I'm not, my first teacher had us play all these games, and I would always just like break the rules and something else completely unrelated would come through. It's like, okay, send a message to someone at 4:00 on Thursday, and then instead I'd be like, well, I saw you sitting at your desk and it looked like this. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I was doing. That's what my desk, but it was like, I can't play by the rules, but some of you guys can. And again, I still develop my intuition nonetheless. And psychokinesis is like, I want to play with that one. So anything else before we wrap it up, Hakim? I know people are going to just love this episode. So thank you again so much.
I would like to just give all of you a personal invite to the Psi Games. We're doing some very important work here where we're trying to move away from a fear culture of these abilities and a fear culture of what other governments may be doing to like try to take people and whisk them away in these programs, and really say that the way we combat that is through love and community. And the way we develop in my perspective is through love and community. And so if you're looking for something to be a part of, and another thing maybe even for you would be the Psi Games. It would be a place where you're going to be able to be part of a movement where we're going to develop people cross-generationally in love, compassion, and community towards our greater evolution.
I love that. And friends, I'll have all that information again, like I said, in the show notes. And I remember hearing you say other places there's going to be stuff for kids, for adults, for everyone. So it can be a whole family affair, right? If you want it to be. And
it's free for kids, actually.
Oh, it's free for kids.
Yeah.
Even better.
And parents get 30% off. So if they have children that they want to bring, their children come for free, and then they get 30% off for bringing their children. Because I know it could be expensive for families to travel.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So if you can get there, if you want to get there, that's great. If you can't get there this year, check out the website and and just keep listening and sharing and subscribing because I love being able to share all these great guests and this great information with all of you. I love being part of this movement that I think we're all a part of bringing the divine connection here more and more to our everyday lives. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I say it every time and I mean it so hard, and love you all, and namaste.